everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And June 2nd, 2014 marks 10 years ago that Seth Rollins shocked the world when he turned heel and betrayed the Shield. And for today's edition, I am going to be talking about the success and failures of Seth Rollins' heel turn and his portrayal of the Shield. So, ever since debuting in November at Survivor Series 2012, the trio of Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns, better known as the Shield, were on a real roll and came in with a huge bang and tore through every single person that was put in front of them. From The Undertaker to Daniel Bryan to Kane to Ryback to Randy Orton to Sheamus to The Big Show to the Wyatt family to The Authority to the New Age Outlaws, you name it. The Shield tore through everybody. And even when they aligned themselves with the Authority as hired guns for Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, that did not slow the Shield's momentum at all. They started out dominant and went out dominant. Even Evolution wasn't safe from the Shield as they defeated Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista at two straight pay-per-views back to back. And at one point, all Shield members held WWE Gold. Dean Ambrose had a long title reign as the United States Champion, and Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins had a long title reign as the Tag Team Champions. And it seemed like there was no kink in the armor. The Shield were as strong as any faction that had ever come in WWE. Some would argue that the Shield was the greatest collection of talents ever assembled. You had the high-flying Seth Rollins, you have the powerhouse Roman Reigns, and you had the unhinged, hardcore brawling style of Dean Ambrose. And there was no weak link in the team. And the question you had to ask was, who could stop the Shield? Who could break up this team? And even at the end of 2013, heading into 2014, when it looked like the Shield was going to break up as there was tension brewing between Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, the Shield always managed to get themselves on the same page and get the job done. And they truly were like a band of brothers. They were like a family. And unlike past factions like Evolution, DX, the Corporation, or even the Four Horsemen, where they were centered around one guy, the Shield, there was no leader. Everyone was an equal, everyone was on the same footing, and sometimes one member would take the lead and the others would follow, and vice versa. It truly felt like a team. And when the Shield defeated Evolution at Payback in a classic six-man elimination match, the question had to ask was, where do the Shield go next from here? What was next for the Shield? On the June 2nd, 2014 edition of Raw, shockwaves were sent through the entire stratosphere when Triple H and Randy Orton came out and Triple H said, "You think this is over? It isn't over until I say it's over. I always have a plan B. There's always a plan B." Seth Rollins jumped out of the ring to get a chair while Ambrose and Reigns stood their ground, and it looked like we were going to get another fight between the Shield and Evolution. And then all of a sudden, Seth Rollins took that chair and struck the back of Roman Reigns to the shock of everybody, including Dean Ambrose. What just happened? Why did Seth Rollins do this? and then he would lay out Dean Ambrose and then proceed to deliver multiple chair shots to Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose to close out the show as everybody in the arena and worldwide stood there with their jaws wide open in complete shock as Triple H mouthed to the camera, "I win." Seth Rollins had betrayed the Shield and turned heel. Now, it's interesting that the Shield debuted as heels, but over the course of time, they started to get over and became red hot. And as soon as they walked away from the authority, they became the hottest act in the company, along with Daniel Bryan. When you think of popular figures around that time, Daniel Bryan and The Shield were red hot. So, why did Seth Rollins turn heel? Why did he betray The Shield? We would get our answer very quickly as Seth Rollins explained that I didn't sell out, I bought in to the evolution of Seth Rollins. And he joined the authority, and that left only Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns as the only members left in the Shield, as they would continue on for a couple of more weeks before quietly going their separate ways. But, when this happened, I just couldn't believe it. Why would you break the Shield up? Because they just defeated Evolution at two straight pay-per-views. It looked like we was going to get round three at some point. Why would you do this? Why would you, you know, at the peak of their powers, why would you do this? And I was always under the impression that it was going to be Dean Ambrose who would pull the trigger because, he's so unhinged. He's such a lunatic. But for Seth Rollins to be the guy to do it was quite shocking. And in terms of shocking portrayals, especially ones that you didn't see coming, this was one moment not even I or anybody else saw coming. So, in terms of the success and failures of this moment, on one side, I would say it was very successful. Seth Rollins came out of this portrayal with nuclear heat. He was the most hated wrestler in the company as he walked around for months on end, declaring himself as the one who created the Shield and the guy who ended up destroying them, hence the name The Architect. And he was definitely the biggest heel in the company, without a doubt. And I would say the breakup of the Shield after Rollins' betrayal, everybody came out of it better. Everybody came out of it a huge star. And it was one of those rare moments where every member in the team got better. Everyone benefited greatly. I wouldn't like to say who benefited the most. I would say everybody benefited equally. But if I had to choose who benefited the most out of this, definitely Seth Rollins. I would say Roman Reigns as well, but his best work wouldn't come until years later. But I would ultimately say Seth Rollins came out of this smelling like roses and aftershave. I think, you know, to break up the Shield at their peak, kind of reminded me of when Triple H betrayed DX at WrestleMania 15 to join Vince McMahon's corporation and ultimately became the game. That's kind of what this moment reminded me of. Now, in terms of the failures, I think breaking up the Shield was too soon. I think they still had a lot to offer. Maybe another year they could have gone on for. Maybe they could have broken up in 2015, perhaps. But that was the only failure, I would say. But ultimately, I think everything worked out for the best, and it was definitely a shocking moment. But I would say overall, this was a complete success. Seth Rollins benefited immensely, came out of it, as I said, with nuclear heat. And when you think of the top portrayals in wrestling history, this one's got to be right near the top. I mean, it's got to be at least in the top three, or at least the top five. This was one that you didn't see coming because on the surface it looked like the Shield were strong as ever. Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins were tighter than most brothers, and for Seth Rollins to just swing that chair, which has now become an iconic moment, was unbelievable. It's totally unexpected, but ultimately, I'll say it was more successful than a complete failure. As I said, the only failure was, I think, breaking up the Shield was a little bit too soon, but ultimately, this was very, very successful. And I still remember that when Seth Rollins went to swing that chair at Roman Reigns, I could actually hear a fan somewhere in the audience screaming out, "No!" That's kind of how we all felt. Even I did. I thought, what the hell's just happened? Why has this happened for? But yeah, this was a big, big moment. And I suppose with the Shield, they did everything that a team could do. They defeated everybody and won all the gold that was available to them, feuded with everyone, came out looking strong, very rarely ever suffered a defeat. It was very rare you saw the Shield suffer a loss. They did experience a couple of losses, but not much. They were pretty much undefeated for a little, not far from a year. It's got to be at least 6 to 8 months. They never suffered a pinfall, which is insane, really. Even some of the top factions, you know, very rarely ever suffered defeat. Some teams did experience some losses, but I don't think I've ever seen a team built up that strong, quite like the Shield. And they had some excellent matches. But of course, just like anything in wrestling, all good things come to an end. But I think the Shield ended a little bit too soon. And when you look back at it, it's crazy to think that all this took place 10 years ago. It's crazy. You know, a decade has flown by so quickly. I still remember experiencing this moment just like it was yesterday. And 2014 definitely had its fair share of heartbreaking moments. From The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak coming to an end to Ultimate Warrior passing away just a couple of days after his very spooky promo on Raw on the post WrestleMania edition, and of course Seth Rollins betraying the Shield and turning heel. Yeah, 2014 definitely had its fair share of heartbreaking moments. It's hard to believe this was actually 10 years ago when Seth Rollins betrayed the Shield. And it still gets talked about to this day, and rightly so. It was definitely a shocking moment, and certainly in the top 3 or 5 betrayals in wrestling history. God, that is unbelievable. 10 years. Time flies by. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. What was your reaction to Seth Rollins turning heel and betraying the Shield? Were you shocked? Did you see this coming? Do you think it was a success? Do you think it was a failure? Who do you think benefited the most out of this shocking betrayal? Do you think Seth Rollins came out of it better? Do you think Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns came out of this better? Do you think maybe the Shield broke up a bit too soon? Or do you think they should have gone with someone else to betray the Shield? Maybe Dean Ambrose, perhaps, or Roman Reigns? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.